Hello guys, Mr. Neese. I'm going to talk to you about SE 9A. So what is SE 9A? Let's take a look. Trace the historical development of the civil rights movement from the late 1800s through the 21st century, including the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 19th Amendments. So that's a lot of information. It covers a long period and something we could spend the whole year on. We do spend a whole year kind of touching across all these elements, but let's stick this at a high level, try to move kind of quickly. You're going to see me kind of refer to a lot of cases, a lot of different things, just to kind of re-enter your brain on some stuff we've covered or maybe something we might have missed over the course of the year. But starting with the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 19th Amendments. So for this course, we're talking post-Reconstruction, after Civil War. If we're talking 13th Amendment, that is the abolition of slavery, okay? So think of these terms chronologically. 13th Amendment, it's going to be after the Civil War. What are we going to do? We're going to abolish slavery, okay? So if that's the 13th Amendment, the natural progression would be 14th Amendment is we're going to make those people citizens. So it grants citizenship to African Americans who are now no longer slaves. So 13th is abolishing slavery, 14th is making people citizens, 15th would be the final step, and that's allowing African American men to vote. And I say African American men because we're not going to get women's rights to vote until the 19th Amendment, which is the last one. So 13th abolish slavery, 14th citizenship, 15 African American men vote, 19th is women's suffrage, the right to vote. That's when they're going to get the right to vote. So that's kind of how to think of those in a chronological term. Now, let's talk about major developments in civil rights. So we get W.E. Du Bois. All right, he will be an African American man who will do a lot of activism working for civil rights. I talked about him and some other SEs. He is one of the founders of the NAACP. We get 1948, our Armed Forces Truman desegregation order, okay? So 1948, we get an executive order to desegregate because up to this point we had if you were African American, you would be with other African Americans and you'd be separated from non-African Americans within the Allied forces. Hernandez versus Westminster, okay? This is a 1946 case in California. This is about segregation of Mexican children and Mexican American children in schools, and this is ordering that can't happen. Delgado versus Bastrop ISD, this is a Texas one. This is separation of Mexican American children based on national origin is illegal, okay? Hernandez versus Texas is ordering, again, this deals with Mexican Americans. They are protected under the 14th Amendment, all right? They're citizens, okay? That was what the 14th one, remember? This adds Mexican Americans as a class, not just African Americans get this citizenship, but Mexican Americans in the 14th Amendment are granted the same rights. One of the most significant ones will be 1954's Brown versus Board of Education. This ends desegregation. It's a case from Topeka, Kansas. A young girl who wanted to go 2 blocks to an elementary school and was denied that because she's African American. She had to go be segregated in another school. This case is now saying that separate is not equal. The one that said separate was equal, as long as it's separate and kept equal, it'd be okay, was Plessy versus Ferguson. That was the previous case, but Brown versus Board in 1954 overturns it and says separate is not equal, okay? Now, President Eisenhower, let's see, it was after 1954, I believe it was 1957, but we get him sending troops to escort, considered the Little Rock Nine, Little Rock, Arkansas Central High School, 9 African American high school students to attend Central Little Rock. They had to be escorted. They were being denied access to it, including by the governor of the state of Arkansas. So in that case, Eisenhower had to nationalize the troops or the Guard, bring them in and escort them and make sure that they were able to attend those classes. Get the Civil Rights Act of 1957. That was about voting rights and giving some federal powers to enforce certain things, because at this point in 57 there were still problems in the South with African Americans being able to vote. Remember the Jim Crow laws, all the things that were being done to try to keep them from being able to vote. So this gave some federal power and reinforced the power of the rights to vote. We get freedom rides going into the South. We get Martin Luther King. We get the Montgomery bus boycott that kicked off with Rosa Parks sitting in the front of the bus. So we get some of those movements and efforts going on. We get the Civil Rights Act of 1964, an expansion of equal protections. Voting Rights Act of 1965, still trying to address those issues. Title IX, which you've probably heard within schools and sports and equality, but Title IX is going to pass in 72. First woman in the Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor, 1981. Edgewood ISD versus Kirby, landmark case on the distribution of taxes. This is in Texas, dealing with later called the Robin Hood thing, but it was about taking money from richer districts to help fund poor districts. So certain school districts not getting the funds or support or that they need, financially unable to make ends meet, versus other districts that were doing very well. This case was about trying to equalize that a little bit. We get Barack Obama in 2008, first African American elected president. 2015, well, let's back up. 2009, Sonia Sotomayor is the first Latin American and a woman to become a member of the Supreme Court. 2015, we get women are able to serve in combat roles in the military, and we get the Obergefell, if I'm saying that right, versus Hodges ruling, giving marriage equality rights to all states. And we have Hillary Clinton in 2016 as the first female candidate for president. So there's a lot in a short amount of time. Hopefully that refreshes some things for you. The big things to probably keep in mind: 13th is abolishing slavery, 14th is citizenship, 15th is voting rights for African American males, 19th is women's suffrage and voting for women. All right. Hopefully that helps you with SE 9A.